Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
Okay, I want you to think back at a restaurant that you went to that you've never been to, and you weren't sure what to order, but whatever you selected, you thought, oh my, this is so good. I can't wait to come back and try more.
Okay, well, so we're all foodies, and
we are.
The three of us experienced this moment for me together while we were in Orlando, and you guys treated me to my birthday dinner to Hawkers.
Ah.
That was my first Hawkers and Portillo's, which now DFW is getting Portillo's. Am I saying their name right? Portillo's?
Yes.
Both of those left me. We went to Hawkers here in Dallas because I had to have Chad experience, because I do remember our trip to Hawkers. Yeah. We just about ordered everything off the menu.
And that's the intent
danger
of the
being a foodie.
But that's the intent of Hawkers, though, by the way, in case people are wondering. It's small plates meant to be shared generally. Yeah. So I thought you were going to steal mine when you started down this path, Marianne, because
the
very first one was on a similar trip. Our team was traveling. And if you remember, I assigned various genres of food. Yes. And I think you selected this one, interestingly enough. It was a hole-in-the-wall, and we love eating at hole-in-the-wall, non-chain restaurants when we travel. And it was a Thai place in Orlando that was on the top, 10 Yelp restaurants in the country.
And it was a little bitty old Wendy's. Wendy's. In an interesting part of town, but it was some of the best curry I feel like we've ever had.
Hands down. And incredible. Josh, what about you?
Well, my wife and I recently have been going through this 28-day cleanse, and it's fish, chicken, vegetables, and fruit, and that's it. No butter, no bread, no sugar, no fun. No, I'm just kidding. And we're learning to love it. But there was a restaurant we ate out at here recently called Tenfold. It's just a locally owned place in Nashville, and the menu looked so good, and there were two things that I could eat off of it. So I had to order the fish. But I have told her, when we're on the backside of this, we are going to experience Tenfold, and I'm going to order several things. Tenfold dishes. Yes, exactly what I want off of this, because I had to deny myself and pick up my cross that day. Oh, good. But I will be going back. Tenfold, I'm coming for you.
Oh, my goodness. That's awesome. Well, the reason why I asked that question is our guest today, Tiger, is one of those guys that when I first came to D6 Family Ministry, he was like a name talked about by all of the student pastors. This is a who's who guy. And, I'm so thankful for his heart. You'll hear what he's doing, in this point and era in his life. But he is an insightful guy that when you hear him, you go, okay, I can take 1 or 2 more podcasts or 10 more podcasts with more of this content. And he will deliver. This is not the only thing he knows. This is just scraping the surface. So let's dive in and listen to Tiger. There are so many things we can talk about. In fact, we've got to figure out how to narrow it down just to finish out our podcast on the other side of this. But when we come back from the break, Tiger, my fellow.
excited to introduce you to a remarkable new book that will transform your approach to children's ministry. The Faith of Our Children, 8 Timely Research Insights for Disciplining the Next Generation by Matt Markins. If you're a children's ministry leader, you know the profound impact early faith formation can have on young lives. In The Faith of Our Children, Matt Markins, President and CEO of Awana, a global leader in child discipleship, delves into the primary areas that lay the foundation for a lasting faith. This book serves as an indispensable guide, equipping you and your team with the insight and systems needed to cultivate faith that endures. Download a free chapter of The Faith of Our Children at d6family.com.
We're live from the D6 conference in Orlando, Florida, and I am joined by Tiger McLuen. Tiger served in student ministry in the local church, oversaw the youth and family ministry program at both Bethel and Luther seminaries, and is now the executive director of Youth Ministry Consultants. YMC focuses on coaching, training, and speaking, particularly with leaders in smaller churches who are often undertrained and under-resourced. In his semi-retirement, you can find him hanging out with his wife, kids, and grandkids, or riding his motorcycle. I love the semi-retirement chuckle that came along with it. Do you ever really retire if you are in ministry?
Well, no. I kind of retired from an organization I led for 29 years while I was teaching at Bethel and Luther, and then I did my Bible study, and I couldn't find retirement anywhere in the Bible.
Right.
Doesn't seem that God operates that way.
Exactly.
So I wrestled with, what do I do next? And this opportunity, this idea came up to serve the smaller church, and so I call it my semi-retirement. Or part-time. I'm able to play a little bit, and it's all good.
Well, I love that. I love the conversation that we're going to have today. It is obviously a pertinent one. It seems like the same conversation we've been having for the 15 or 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. About students walking away from their faith, particularly after graduation in those first, 5 years or so. I would venture to say that it's now spreading more into adulthood. If I'm maybe incorrect in that, but with this deconstruction movement that's been taking place, what do you think are some of the things that are factoring into the alarming rate of faith abandonment at this point?
Well, it has been talked about for a while, and I've identified what I call the critical decade, which is 13 to 23. That 10-year period will tell us as parents or as churches or as ministry leaders, whether what we've done has roots or has been, as Jesus talked about the seed, it taken away by the cares of the world or blown away and have no roots. That decade is what I've been thinking about and wrestling with all of my ministry life. With the key question I came up with when I was running my first ministry was, will our children have faith? Will the next generation come to know a truth that can set them free? And not just that they would attend religious events while they were young, but they would exit that critical decade with a faith that's still intact. And you're right, depending on who you study or what, the statistic says 40 to 60% of our kids are dropping out of disconnect by the end of that critical decade. There's a whole other deconstruction movement in the adult world, but my focus has been on why is it that so many enter that decade with an identification of following Jesus or religious behavior even, and by the exit of that decade, they've disconnected, and that's a depressing statistic.
Oh, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? What do you think the church or parents or both are doing or not doing that have contributed to this phenomenon?
Well, let's start with the factors that are part of that. One is just the messy extension of adolescence. What used to be, and many people still think, adolescence is teenagers, 13 to 19, 6-year period, and that's how we used to understand it. Psych 101, junior high was early adolescence, high school was late adolescence. You were discipling your high school kids on the cusp of adulthood. So you had language that way. You were thinking that way. What we now know is that adolescence has gotten longer. It's gotten messier.
The frontal lobe isn't fully formed, right?
Yeah, the frontal lobe, they say now, they've learned about that it's not fully developed until, mid-20s or if you're a male, 40, somewhere in there.
We still got some time, right?
But that extension has really changed the dynamics. In other words, adolescence enters sooner. 10 and a half or 11 is when, because adolescence is a culturally created phenomenon. It's not a fact. There are cultures in history that never had adolescence as we understand it in Western society. And there are some cultures in the world today that don't have adolescence. So it's part of our culture in America and Western societies. And that's part of what's happened is it's gotten messier and longer. So now we have early adolescence, which is middle school years. We have mid-adolescence, which is high school. So again, when you're discipling an 11th grader, you're not discipling a kid on the cusp of adulthood. You're in a kid who's in the middle of this long, messy journey. And then you have late adolescence, which is 18 to 22, when the frontal lobe is not yet fully developed. A lot of them are in college, and some of those adolescent behavior you'll see in America today is on the college campus because it's an adolescent world, not an adult world.
Right.
And I'm not insulting college students because everybody goes through it differently, but as a group. And then we have now a new coined phrase a decade or two ago is emerging adulthood, which is 22 to 29. So what used to be fairly concrete 6-year period of helping them with faith through that is now an 11 plus early adulthood. And so that's the part of the factor is we're, I think, discipling with a mindset that doesn't understand the complexity. I always tell adults, we were all teenagers once, but you were never their age in this age.
That's true.
Completely different.
It absolutely is. Even raising my own kids, and
Exactly.
I'm just a generation away, right? I know that you talk about faith factors in student ministry.
Yeah.
For the listener who has no clue what I'm talking about, will you fill them in?
Yeah. Well, faith factors, what I'm doing for the last 30 some years has been, in addition to wrestling with those who have dropped out and reading articles by them about why I don't go to church and why I don't believe anymore, I started interviewing students who are 20 to 30 who haven't dropped out and asking a simple question. Why are you still engaged?
Right.
Why are you still involved? Why do you still believe? And that conversation led to what I call the 7 faith factors. These are the 7 things that came out of those conversations that repeatedly were said by those students as things that caused them to be hanging in there. And so I've listed the 7, and I kind of have a visual of like a bookends on the bookshelf, 7 books on the bookshelf. First one is family of origin. Obviously, we hear about it all the time here at D6. Family is a critical spiritual influence on the kid's life. My contention is that, unfortunately, some of our family ministry models make assumptions about the family that aren't accurate, which is that every parent is a Christian parent wanting to disciple their kids, and all we need to do is give them a resource or an idea, and then they'll sit around the table and pray with their kids. And I always say that's not the real world I live in. So my family ministry class at Bethel called it Tiger's Totally Unscientific Theory of Thirds, which is called TUT. And TUT says a third of our parents are those Christian parents ready to be partners with us in discipling their own kids. That's a wonderful thing.
Where mom and dad are both on board and trying to
do the best job.
Yeah.
Middle third are what I call spiritual parents who would like to do it, but when you suggest the idea, two things appear inside them. One is guilt, and the second is inadequacy. And if we only use a model that encourages the Christian parent, we will miss the opportunities to figure out ways to support and encourage those who feel guilty and inadequate. And I want our churches to be more careful. Family of origin is tremendously important, but more and more kids are coming up being raised by families who are in this category. And guilt and inadequacy doesn't ever produce a committed disciple parent. It causes them to not quit reading our emails, to quit going to the parent seminar or the parent meeting because all they do is feel guilty and inadequate. So we have to ask a different set of questions for them. The other third is not your non-Christian parents. They give you permission to work with their kids, but they are not involved in this faith formation of their children. That's the family I grew up in. So if my church would have used the family ministry model I hear a lot, I would have never heard about Jesus, because my mom and dad were not going to be the tools to get there. So I want to make sure that when we talk about family of origin, we're wrestling with the reality of how messy that is.
Right.
And get a ministry mindset that says, what do the Christian parents need from us? And there's lots of great tools out there in that category. But the middle one, what does a person who feels guilty and inadequate need from us in the church? And I think we got to ask that question more, because these parents can be involved in their faith formation of their kids, but often they're not, because they don't know what to do. So I always say the Christian parents are your partners. The spiritual parents are your supporters. They really like that you're doing Christian stuff with their kids, because they really do want their kids to grow in faith. They just don't know how to do it themselves. And the non-Christian parents give you permission to work with their kids. That's it.
Yeah.
And we have to ask, what do they need? They still love their kids. They still want their kids to be okay. They don't know what that means from our perspective.
Right. It kind of becomes then twofold, right? What do the parents need from us,
Bingo.
but also what do their kids need from us too?
Yep. And we have to ask both questions. If family of origin is as powerful as we say it is, and it is,
right.
Every study will tell you that, I want to always remind people, I don't give the faith factors as a formula, because it doesn't work that way. Number one is I didn't have any faith factors when I was 18 years old, and I followed Jesus here. But I didn't grow up in a family of origin that did it. I didn't have these other ones I'll talk about. But at 18, I went to a camp and met Jesus, and trying to figure it out from then. So the first one, powerful, basic, but I think messier than we tend to picture it in too many seminars. So that's the first faith factor, and it's an uncontrollable variable. I mean, can't manage that. We can't make the parents be anything.
Right.
We just work with what we got, and so that's number one. Number two is what I call sacred memories, and what I mean by that is it's when God. I listen to the stories of these kids. They talk about an experience where God broke through to their awareness. Something happened. It was a subjective encounter of the real God, and so then I started hearing where those were. They were at camps, they were at mission trips, they were in youth group at weekend retreats, they were sometimes in one-to-one conversations, sometimes they were at home with mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, they were in a hard time at a funeral of grandma, they were at a good time, they were at those kind of things, and so I listened to the story of these moments and how much that was influential to them hanging into their faith, even when they went to Philosophy 101 class in college, and everybody deconstructed everything, and they kept hanging in and going, yeah, but. And for me, it was, yeah, but. Thursday under a tree in Silver Cliff Ranch in Colorado, I didn't know anything other than I met Jesus. I met God in my own way. No one gave me a formula. No one gave me a prayer to read. No one told me what to do. We had 15 minutes of quiet, and I sat under a tree. Beautiful. And that's a powerful, sacred memory that hung with me even through my freshman year, where I made all kinds of mistakes. But that one God moment haunted me. And my contention is that our job in ministry, we can't control them. I've tried to manufacture sacred memories, schedule God for Thursday.
Right.
Yeah. But I think our job in the church is to ask, if that's a powerful faith factor, how can we set the table? That's why I say get them to camp, get them on the mission trip, get them there, go to district activity, go to conferences, because you never know. That might be the place where God shows up for that one kid,
right, in
a way that breaks through. And I've had phone calls from kids I've worked with that walked away from the faith, and 10 years later they call me and say, I haven't thought about you much in the last 10 years, but when we got on my knees last night and received Jesus, I thought of you because I knew what you were trying, and they would call and say, thanks for trying. We got to keep setting the table. And we got to keep reaching those kids who don't have the family of origin, because they need to hear Jesus. We can't. Right. I get a little tired of people complaining about non-involved parents and, drop-off parents. That's who we have, and God has called us. That's our mission field.
That's right.
And we are called to love them and serve them and ask, what do they need from us? So family of origin, sacred memories. The third is, I call it in authentic community, which is peer groups, peer support. It's creating places where kids are actually known. Because the sidebar to that is there are 3 questions kids are asking. Fuller Institute has got a great book called 3 Big Questions. I've been saying this for years, and we've talked about that. One is, who am I? Which is identity. Way more confusing to answer that in 2023 than ever before in the history of our country, because every framework around that has been taken away. So now a 15-year-old has to start from scratch.
Right.
So who am I is huge. Whose am I is belonging. That may be the driving thing for adolescents right now. Where do I belong? And if I don't belong, life is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And some of the most accepting places out there that will say you belong here have nothing to do with Jesus.
Right.
But they're
and
really
even are
good.
probably based on the first question of who am I, right?
Yeah. And then the third one is, do I matter? Do I have any purpose? Is there anything of why am I here kind of question? And those have not been brand new questions, but they really shape what's going on. And that's why authentic community goes right at those. You belong here. We care about you. When you walk in the room, a couple of people light up because you're in the room in a non-creepy way. It's like we all want that. We all want to walk in the room and have someone go, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
And when you're beginning the journey of seeking out your identity, belonging really is the key factor.
Yeah. We are talking about faith factors with Tiger McLuen, and we're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back and finish up the last 4 of those.
The D6 Conference is thrilled to present a lineup of more than 70 experts specializing in family ministry who are ready to inspire, challenge, and equip you with strategies for generational discipleship. Guided by the teachings of Deuteronomy 6, which calls for a love for God and a full-hearted engagement with His Word and impressing His Word on the hearts of families, the D6 Conference is meticulously crafted to instruct, empower, and inspire ministry leaders, parents, pastors, and volunteers to embody the vision and mission laid out in this sacred text. This event stands as a premier family ministry conference, offering invaluable opportunity for your entire team to be inspired, engage in idea exchanges, and foster new relationships with like-minded church leaders. With the choice of breakout sessions led by leading voices in family ministry, you're guaranteed to walk away equipped with practical tools and resources that will prove instrumental in your ministry. Whether in Orlando or Seattle, we invite you in 2024 to be a part of this transformative conversation and explore how you can adopt an all-inclusive approach to discipleship for both your church and your home. Don't miss out on this chance to elevate your discipleship approach. Register now at d6conference.com.
And we're back. Tiger, would you finish up? What are those last 4 faith factors that you talk about?
Okay. The middle one in the whole process is one that I call just simply know. It's pretty basic, but it really is the middle one. It's the foundation, which is they got to know the Bible. We have more and more kids growing up biblically illiterate in our churches.
Mm-hmm. We were just having conversations about this earlier today, about the state of the Bible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in an attempt to be relevant, many ministries have gone too shallow. They don't give kids ability to understand a worldview that's Christian worldview. Mm-hmm. And in this world, I know everybody hopes that their kids are going to know the Bible and be able to handle it and go out there and defend their faith, blah, blah, blah. I always have a phrase, it's hope is not a strategy. Mm-hmm. God bless you for the feeling, parents. God bless you for the feeling, youth workers. But if we don't equip kids with an ability to understand the promises of Scripture so they can live in them, if you don't know them, they might as well not be there for your experience, because you can't live into them. You can't hold on to them when the world gets ugly, and the world's going to get ugly. And it's hard to hang on to your faith in this world we live in today. Mm-hmm. So they have to know. And so it's a basic one, but I think we have to go back because more and more kids have this vague understanding of the Bible. God is love, and that's everything. And that's true, but that's not the whole thing. There's a lot of parts to that. And so we have a lot of kids with a vague understanding. And another phrase I say a lot is vagueness is killing the church. Vagueness is really getting in the way. Mm-hmm. And we got to give clarity of what the Bible is and what a disciple is and what does that mean and how do we live and how do we hold on in a confusing world to the promises of Scripture. Mm-hmm. So know is the fourth one. The fifth one is engagement. What I heard from young people who were still involved was I got engaged early. I call it moving from consumer faith to active faith. From too many youth groups, too many churches have a butt in the building theology. If I get their rear end in this religious building, we're doing our job. That's what discipleship is attendance. And some of the kids who have attended youth group faithfully go to college and start attending some other group faithfully, and all of a sudden you can't recognize them spiritually anymore. So engagement is when somebody believes in them and they give them a specific opportunity to use the gift that God has given them to do something bigger than just sit there. And I think our churches have to think hard about this. I sometimes say to a church, take 1 month and take the average, the ages of people who are on the platform or the front or the altar or whatever you call it. Take their age, add them up, divide by the number of people, and what's your average age? A lot of churches, the average age of person up front is 50 years old or older. And I love 50-year-olds and old. I'm old. Mm-hmm. But that tells the next generation, you got to sit there for another 30 years before you have any value to us up front. That's not okay with me. Yeah. We got to engage them. We got to find out how can we use them in real life. The other phrase that drives me crazy, I'm going to offend my evangelical friend, is big church. I hate that phrase because it tells us only big people go to big church. And if I want our kids to actually engage in the worship of our church, then telling them to go somewhere else until they're a big person is not engagement. So I want them engaged in mission trips. I want them engaged in local service. I want them engaged in my local church. I want them engaged. I want them to hear the voice of an adult saying, you know what, you're really good at that. I think you could help me with that. I'm not saying dump everything on kids, but I wrote a book on student leadership, and student leadership and discipleship are totally integrated. And I think we have to be more intentional about asking for opportunities. When I did a mission trip to Honduras, I asked a high school kid to be my primary translator. And she couldn't believe that someone would actually ask her to do it. And I overdid. I overused language like, I can't do this trip without you. You're the person that's going to make this happen. Will you join the team? Because I not only wanted her as a translator because she's bilingual, but I wanted her to hear someone say, I believe in you. Yeah. Those things shape us. So I listened to stories of people engaged. They talked about, I got engaged, I got involved. I helped out in children's ministry. I was a high school kid helping out in middle school. I got involved in the community. I worked on a service project. I went on an intergenerational mission trip. I learned that serving God was a way that I lived out my faith, not just listening about someone else tell me what to think about God. Right. That's way too passive. So engagement. Yeah. Number 6 is a safe place to search and wonder. If we don't give teenagers a place where they can ask a hard question and not get anyone freaking out or right away correcting them, because a middle school kid is going to, in the process of their frontal lobe just starting, they're going to make dumb statements. That's what I love about them, and it also drives adults crazy. You can't say that in church, or no, that's not right. The Bible says, and I want to create a safe place where they go, yeah, we'll get around to correction, but slow down. This is a messy journey, and these kids they're listening to a world out there. If they can't bring what they just heard in school to church and have a loving place where they can wonder about that, they're going to just never bring the question to us ever again. Right. Yeah. And parents,
and then they'll hold that question.
That's right. Well, they'll take the question out in social media, and they'll get an answer.
That's right, yeah.
And parents need to learn how not to panic. And youth workers have to not panic. I'm losing, well, maybe, but you are going to lose them if you don't have a place where they can say, thanks for letting me ask that question.
Right.
And again, by the way, no kid will say, thanks for letting me, but it's part of the process.
Right.
So search and wonder is huge, I think. We forget that the line from I accept Jesus to I'm living faithfully as an adult, there is struggle and doubt between those 2 points, no matter who the person is. And we've got to create intentionally adult leaders who can handle the messiness of struggle, of doubt, of question, of, well, I'm not sure I believe that anymore because I heard, and to not panic, but to say, let's talk about that. That's a great question. I understand why you're there. Tell me more why you got there. Make them work their frontal lobe a little bit without judgment.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the opposite bookend, is adult mentors outside the family. Non-family caring people who represent the love of Jesus in real terms. This is why I've always been committed to youth ministry. In addition to family ministry, all youth ministry is, if done well, is intergenerational. Because you surround kids with other caring adults who look them in the eyes if they really matter and show interest in their world, which is life-giving to a kid.
Yeah.
And we have to have more adults who know how to do that. I mean, that's where I might have had a half a faith factor, because I had an adult volunteer who I kind of liked. I didn't know much. I wasn't following. I was learning about Jesus. So after I went away on that Silver Cliff Ranch, accepted Jesus, went to college, got massacred in college because I went to a secular university, came back struggling, feeling guilty, didn't know what to do. Bob had 6 breakfasts with me. And that is one of the most sacred memories in my life.
That's awesome.
Is a guy who was looking at a 19-year-old kid who spiritually was a mess. But he met with me 6 times, and we talked. I had finally got the courage to finally admit what was really going on, and he didn't freak out. We prayed together. We read the Bible, but I remember no content. But that changed my life. And all of my adult life, I have had a phrase, and that's, I just want to be a Bob, to one kid. We get so caught up in the big. Most of these faith factors can be done in any size church, in any place, on a one-to-one, or you don't have to be an expert to do any of these things. So what these have been helpful to me is to hang some things on, to stay focused, to not just hang on hope, but to have a strategy, to ask questions in my church of, how are we doing with that? How are we doing with helping parents? And then ask the Tut question. How are we doing with sacred memories? Are we setting enough tables? Are we, each one you can ask and evaluate to have question about. So those have been the what I call the 7 faith factors. So thoughts?
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that it's they're measurable. You can analyze each student and each of their scenarios. I love that it's applicable for church leaders to be able to look at the students in their ministry. I love that it's applicable for parents to be able to look at their own students and
I share
say,
this when I'm doing parent seminars.
Exactly, and just to be able to understand, does my kid have someone, does my kid have a Bob, right? Have I built that into our family, our network, and things of that nature.
Right, because every parent needs to understand, as powerful as number one is, they can't do it alone.
Right.
And so that's why I have it as the bookends. The bookends, if you can have a parent and adult mentors sharing the voice of influence into a teenager, you increase the odds. Like I said, it's not a formula, but I do believe the more of the faith factors a young person has in their life, the greater resistance to drop out there is.
Right.
Doesn't guarantee it, but there's these haunting memories, there's these people, there's a knowledge of Scripture, there's things that bubble up and haunt them while they're struggling or drifting.
Yeah.
And so healthy parents need to be asking for mentors, looking for mentors. When they find one, I had a dad a number of years ago call me and go, Tiger, was talking to my daughter Hannah, shy little 4th grade girl, and we were talking about church, and she said, Dad, only 3 people talk to me in church other than Sunday school. Because she knew Sunday school teachers are wonderful, right? Yeah. But she just made the observation that nobody talks to her. And he asked, who are the 3? And I happen to be one of the 3. And smart dad was calling each of us to say, I know my daughter's shy, but will you do me a favor and not give up on talking to my daughter? There's a dad who knows that adult mentors have a voice. I was never her small group leader. I was never her youth pastor. But in the hallway of my church, Hannah was my mission wheel.
Yeah.
And so she was like, "Hey, Hannah." And she was like, "Oh, Dad."
Right.
But years later, when she was a teenager, she went to Honduras with us. We have this relationship.
Yeah.
She knows that she has an old guy praying for her and caring about her.
I love that.
It's part of the journey of parenting. And parents, we talked about, the wonderful parents, but part of what parents have done that been part of the problem is we've overprotected our kids. There's, not to do too much, but sidebar, 5 functions of families are to love, protect, to teach, to model, and to get rid of them, to send them out. Our parents in today's world are focusing on 1 and 2. It's all about protection. It's all about loving them. And it's called helicopter parenting. Now it's called snowplow parenting, where they go right in front and protect.
Right.
That doesn't create a disciple able to go out in the real world.
That's right. Yeah.
And we have to teach them, model it, and then equip them to go out in the world in the messy reality of what they're going to face.
Yeah. Tiger, thank you so much for this conversation today and for helping us as we analyze not just the students in our ministries, but even in our own home.
Yeah.
We appreciate you being a friend to D6.
Yeah, love being here. Thank you.
I love how he pointed us to the importance of sacred memories, and creating those for our kids, and the importance of those retreats, camps, those milestone moments. And that, to me, as a next gen, as a family pastor who flies that flag, it gave me more ammunition to be able to stress to parents the importance of what God can do in those moments that we've set the table for him to show up in their lives over a period of unhurried time, unscheduled time.
That's incredible. I think as someone who really treasures and values scripture, his statement of vagueness is killing the church. Fireball. That is fire bars.
Yeah.
That's what the youth pastors of today are saying. Bars, 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 fire, fire, fire. If I could give you every emoji in my communication, Mr. Tiger, vagueness is killing the church. Let that really move you into action. We've got to know God's word. It's got to consume a more significant portion of our information diet. And it's got to be preached, taught, lived out, practiced, every word you could possibly add to that.
That's right.
I just love those words. What a soundbite.
Agreed. I love, and I took to heart what he said in his opening, the first one of 7 of the factors, when he was walking us through, and he talked about family origins. He said, sometimes family ministry models today assume that we're all Christians and all Christian parents are leaning in. And D6 family ministry, for people who don't know us, they sometimes lob that accusation at us. That's not what Tiger was doing, but others who don't know us do that. And I would love to take his words and share the heart here. He said 1/3 are dedicated Christians who will lean in. 1/3 are nominal. They don't know. They're fearful. They're inadequate, in there. And some are non-believers. Let's go back in our nation's history, thinking North America. I know there's people who listen around the world. But when people wanted to lean into prenatal health care, expecting moms, if we'd have taken that attitude that says, yeah, that's not where our parents and expecting moms are, we're just not going to do that. We don't care if they're around secondhand smoke while being pregnant. We don't care if they drink alcohol. We don't care if they don't take vitamins and they don't. I mean, you have to enhance that audience while also dealing with the other situations. You grow that audience to where today, that's the norm. People deal with protecting that unborn child as the biggest audience, not the minority audience. So I want to challenge our people to go, let's lean into spiritual preventative health care, which is generational discipleship, and work through the other issues. So sorry, soapbox there for me, but big area. Yeah.
That's powerful. What a powerful interview.
It was.
And I'm looking forward to our guest next week, Mr. Matthew Tingblad. And he is going to talk through deconstruction and apologetics and the importance of that. And in the meantime, we want you to know we're praying for you. We want to encourage you to take these 7 faith factors and think about how they could be implemented not only in your church, but in your home. We hope you have a great week.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.